My name is Sophie Hayes. I am 27 years old and a data analyst by profession. The story I'm about to share changed everything I thought I knew about kindness, power, and justice. It started on an ordinary Tuesday morning at TechVision Industries, where I'd worked for 3 years in the analytics department. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing quarterly reports, when our HR director, Victoria Sterling, stormed into the office. Her heels clicked sharply against the tile floor, announcing her presence before anyone even looked up. Victoria was known throughout the company for her icy demeanor and sharp tongue. She had perfectly styled black hair, designer suits, and an expression that made you feel small before she even spoke. That morning, she was particularly irritable. Our team lead had called in sick, and Victoria needed someone to pull employee satisfaction data for an urgent board meeting. I happened to be the only analyst available. When she approached my desk, I smiled politely and offered to help her navigate the database system. What happened next would echo through the following months in ways I couldn't possibly imagine. Victoria's eyes narrowed as she looked down at me. "I don't need help from you," she said coldly. "I am not one of your junior colleagues who doesn't understand basic systems." Her voice carried across the entire open office. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. My face burned with embarrassment, but I simply nodded and quietly walked her through the data extraction process she clearly didn't understand. She snatched the report from my hands without a word of thanks and walked away, leaving me standing there, humiliated in front of my peers. That evening, I stayed late to finish my work. The office gradually emptied as people headed home to their families. By 8 o'clock, only the cleaning staff remained, moving quietly through the corridors with their carts and supplies. I'd always noticed them, these invisible workers who kept our world functioning while we barely acknowledged their existence. Among them was an elderly man I'd seen almost every night for the past year. He appeared to be in his 70s, with silver hair, weathered hands, and kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. He wore the standard gray janitorial uniform and moved slowly, methodically, taking pride in his work. Most people walked past him without a glance. Some even left their trash scattered deliberately, as if testing how much mess he'd clean. But there was something about him that caught my attention from the very beginning. Perhaps it was the way he hummed old songs while he worked, or the careful attention he paid to even the smallest details. One evening, months ago, I'd found him struggling with a heavy trash bag. Without thinking, I'd helped him carry it to the disposal area. He'd thanked me warmly, introducing himself as Mr. Liu. From that moment, a quiet friendship had formed. Now, as I packed my laptop, I saw him entering the break room with his cleaning supplies. I grabbed the sandwich I'd saved from lunch and walked over. "Good evening, Mr. Liu," I said, offering him the sandwich. "I thought you might be hungry." Mr. Liu's face lit up with genuine warmth. "Miss Sophie, you're too kind," he said in accented English, accepting the food gratefully. "Every night you think of this old man. Your parents raised you well." We sat together in the empty break room while he ate. This had become our routine over the past several months. I'd bring extra food, and we'd talk about life, dreams, and the small philosophies that made existence meaningful. Mr. Liu was surprisingly well-spoken despite his broken English. He asked thoughtful questions and listened with complete attention, something rare in my fast-paced work environment. That night, I must have looked particularly tired because he noticed immediately. "Something troubles you today," he observed, not as a question but as a statement. I hesitated, then told him about the incident with Victoria. I explained how she'd humiliated me in front of everyone, how she treated people like they were beneath her. Mr. Liu listened carefully, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, looking down at his weathered hands. "I have worked many places in my life," he finally said. "I have seen many kinds of people. Some wear expensive clothes but have poor hearts. Others wear simple uniforms but have rich spirits. The most important thing is not the position you hold, but how you treat those who can do nothing for you." His words struck something deep inside me. "You continue being kind, Miss Sophie," he continued. "Kindness is never wasted. It always returns, sometimes in ways we never expect." Weeks passed, and Victoria's behavior only worsened. She seemed to take particular pleasure in undermining me during meetings. When I presented analysis that contradicted her assumptions, she'd dismiss it publicly. When I suggested improvements to HR processes, she'd mock my limited understanding of organizational dynamics. Other colleagues began avoiding me, afraid that associating with Victoria's target would paint them with the same brush. I felt increasingly isolated at work. My performance reviews were excellent, but Victoria controlled many aspects of career advancement at TechVision. She made sure I knew my place. Yet through it all, my evening conversations with Mr. Liu became a source of unexpected comfort. He never offered empty platitudes or told me to simply tolerate abuse. Instead, he asked me questions that made me think deeply. "Why do you stay at this company?" he asked one night. I'd thought about this often. "Because I love the work itself," I admitted. "I love finding patterns in data, solving complex problems, helping the company make better decisions. I just wish the environment was different." Mr. Liu nodded thoughtfully. "Loving your work is important," he said, "but never let anyone steal your dignity. Remember your worth, even when others cannot see it." He then shared a story from his youth in China about working in a factory where supervisors treated workers like machines. "But I knew I was more than my job title," he said. "I studied at night, learned English from old books, and never stopped growing. Position is temporary. Character is forever." One Friday evening, something unusual happened. I was working late again, finalizing a presentation for Monday's executive meeting. Victoria had assigned it to me that afternoon, giving me barely 48 hours to compile complex workforce analytics spanning 5 years. It was clearly designed to make me fail, or at least ensure I'd have no weekend. As I worked, I heard raised voices coming from the corridor. Curious, I quietly moved toward the sound. Victoria was speaking to someone in harsh, dismissive tones. "I don't care about your procedures," she was saying. "This office should have been cleaned an hour ago. Your inefficiency is unacceptable." I peered around the corner and saw her berating Mr. Liu. He stood there quietly, mop in hand, as she continued her tirade. "People like you need to understand there are standards here," Victoria said coldly. "This is a professional environment, not some night market. Do your job properly, or we'll find someone who can." What shocked me most was that Mr. Liu never defended himself. He simply bowed his head slightly and said, "My apologies, ma'am. I will do better." His humility in the face of such disrespect moved something in me. After Victoria stormed off, I approached him. "Mr. Liu, are you all right?" He looked up and smiled that same gentle smile, though I could see the hurt in his eyes. "I am fine, Miss Sophie. Words from angry people are like wind. They blow strong, but they pass. But I was angry enough for both of us. How dare she treat this kind man so cruelly?" The following week, I made a decision. I started documenting every instance of Victoria's abusive behavior, not just toward me but toward others. I noticed she treated all the support staff with contempt, the cleaning crew, the cafeteria workers, the security guards. She reserved her charm for executives and board members, transforming instantly when someone important appeared. It was a masterclass in two-faced professionalism. Meanwhile, my friendship with Mr. Liu deepened. I learned that he'd been working at TechVision for nearly 2 years, always on the night shift. He lived in a small apartment across town and had adult children, though he rarely saw them. "They are busy with their own lives," he explained without bitterness. "This is natural. I am proud they have built successful careers." I started bringing him dinner more regularly, actual meals instead of just sandwiches. Sometimes I'd bring Chinese food, which made his eyes light up with nostalgia. "This reminds me of home," he'd say, savoring each bite. "You are very thoughtful, Miss Sophie." One evening, I brought him an English learning workbook I'd found at a bookstore. "I noticed you mentioned wanting to improve your English," I said. "Maybe this could help." Mr. Liu held the book like it was made of gold. His eyes actually filled with tears. "No one has given me such a gift in many years," he said quietly. "You see me as a person, not just a janitor. This means more than you know." That moment felt significant, though I didn't understand why yet. Spring arrived, bringing changes to TechVision. The company announced a major merger with a larger tech conglomerate. Rumors swirled about restructuring, layoffs, and leadership changes. Victoria seemed particularly energized by the chaos, using the uncertainty to consolidate her power. She began conducting performance reviews that felt more like intimidation sessions. Several good employees, quietly left the company rather than endure her management style. I kept my head down and did exceptional work, hoping quality would speak louder than politics. My analytics had helped the company identify significant cost savings and revenue opportunities. I'd built predictive models that improved project outcomes by 30%. But none of that seemed to matter to Victoria, who continued blocking my advancement at every turn. Then something strange happened. I was unexpectedly assigned to a high-profile project analyzing the merger integration data. This was far above my pay grade, the kind of project usually reserved for senior analysts or external consultants. When I asked my manager about it, he seemed surprised too. "The request came from corporate," he said, shrugging. "Someone specifically asked for you by name. Congratulations." Victoria was furious when she found out. She called me into her office, her face tight with barely controlled anger. "I don't know who you've been networking with," she hissed, "but don't think this changes anything. You're still just a junior analyst who got lucky." I left her office confused but determined to excel at this opportunity. As I worked late that night, Mr. Liu stopped by my desk during his rounds. "Working hard, I see," he observed. "Yes," I replied. "Big opportunity. I need to prove myself." He smiled knowingly. "You already have, Miss Sophie. More than you realize." The merger project consumed the next month of my life. I worked 70-hour weeks, diving deep into complex data integration challenges. The parent company, called Orion Holdings, was a massive conglomerate with operations across 12 countries. As I analyzed their organizational structure, I noticed something interesting. The company had been built by a single founder 30 years ago, starting from a small manufacturing business and growing into a billion-dollar empire. The founder's name appeared in historical documents, but rarely in recent materials. Most current operations were managed by professional executives and board members. The company culture materials emphasize values like dignity for all employees, servant leadership, and walking in others' shoes. These phrases appeared repeatedly in internal communications from Orion Holdings. It struck me as unusual. Most companies talked about innovation, disruption, or shareholder value. This focus on human dignity seemed almost old-fashioned, yet somehow deeply appealing. I presented my integration analysis to TechVision's executive team in late April. The presentation went exceptionally well. I'd identified redundancies that could save millions while protecting jobs through retraining programs rather than layoffs. The executives were impressed. Victoria sat in the back of the room, her expression unreadable. After the meeting, our CEO personally thanked me. "Excellent work, Sophie," he said. "You've got a bright future here." For the first time in years, I felt genuinely hopeful about my career. That evening, I excitedly told Mr. Liu about the successful presentation. He listened with his characteristic attention, asking detailed questions about my recommendations. His questions were surprisingly sophisticated, touching on aspects of organizational culture and change management that seemed beyond what I'd expect from a night janitor. Then, without warning, Mr. Liu disappeared. One Tuesday evening, I arrived at the office to work late as usual. The cleaning crew was there, but Mr. Liu wasn't among them. I asked one of his colleagues, a younger man named Ramon. "Mr. Liu." Ramon looked uncomfortable. "He finished his contract last week. Didn't come back." My heart sank. Why wouldn't he have told me? We talked just days ago, and he'd said nothing about leaving. I felt a surprising sense of loss. Our evening conversations had become one of the few bright spots in my work life. He'd been like a grandfather figure, offering wisdom and perspective when everything else felt chaotic. The following evening, I checked with the cleaning supervisor. "Mr. Liu's employment ended," she confirmed. "That's all the information I have." It seemed strange. Mr. Liu had never mentioned any plans to leave. He'd seemed content with his work, despite Victoria's cruelty. Had something happened? Was he ill? The not knowing bothered me deeply. A week later, I found an envelope on my desk. It was made of simple paper, with my name written in careful, slightly shaky handwriting. Inside was a brief note in English. "Dear Miss Sophie, thank you for seeing me as a person. Thank you for your kindness to an old man. You have a good heart. Never let the world make it hard. I must go now, but I will not forget you. Your friend Liu." Tears pricked my eyes as I read the note. I folded it carefully and kept it in my desk drawer, a reminder that genuine human connection could exist even in the most unexpected places. Life continued without Mr. Liu's evening presence. The office felt emptier somehow. I focused on my work, which remained challenging and engaging despite Victoria's ongoing hostility. The Orion Holdings merger was progressing, bringing new executives to our building for regular meetings. I noticed increased security and more closed-door sessions among senior leadership. Something big was happening, though us lower-level employees were kept in the dark. In mid-May, Victoria's behavior escalated dramatically. During a department-wide meeting, she publicly blamed me for a data error that I hadn't made. When I tried to politely correct the record with documentation, she cut me off. "I don't have time for your excuses," she snapped. "This is exactly why junior analysts shouldn't be given responsibilities beyond their capabilities." The unfairness stung, but I'd learned to expect it from her. What surprised me was what happened next. The following morning, I received an email from Orion Holdings' HR department requesting a meeting. My stomach dropped. Had Victoria's complaints reached the parent company? Was I about to be fired? The meeting was scheduled for Friday afternoon at Orion's downtown headquarters. I spent the week anxious and distracted. I reviewed all my work, preparing to defend my performance if needed. I even updated my resume just in case. My colleagues noticed my stress. A few offered quiet sympathy, but most kept their distance. Nobody wanted to be associated with someone potentially on the chopping block. Thursday evening, as I worked late preparing for the Friday meeting, a new janitor, an older woman I'd never seen before, approached my desk. "Are you Sophie Hayes?" she asked. I nodded. She handed me a small sealed envelope. "Someone asked me to give you this," she said, then walked away before I could ask questions. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single card with an embossed gold logo I didn't recognize. The message was typed in elegant font. "Your presence is requested at Orion Holdings headquarters, executive floor, Friday, May 17th, 5 p.m. Please come alone. A car will be arranged if needed. This is separate from your morning HR appointment." My confusion deepened. 2 different meetings at the same company on the same day? The formal tone and mysterious delivery felt surreal. Who would send such a message? Why the secrecy? I barely slept Thursday night, my mind spinning with possibilities. Was this some kind of corporate investigation? A test? Or perhaps, given the dramatic delivery, something else entirely? Friday morning's HR meeting turned out to be routine, just standard merger-related paperwork about benefits and policies. The HR representative was friendly and professional, making no mention of performance issues or complaints. "You're doing great work," she said at the end. "We're glad to have you on board as we integrate the companies." Relief washed over me, but it was immediately replaced by intensified curiosity about the evening meeting. At 4:30, I left the TechVision office and took the subway to downtown. Orion Holdings occupied a stunning 40-story glass building in the financial district. I'd never been inside before. The lobby was all marble and steel, with enormous art installations and a waterfall feature that must have cost a fortune. I approached the security desk, my heart pounding. "I have an appointment on the executive floor," I said, showing the mysterious card. The security guard's eyes widened slightly. He made a phone call, spoke quietly, then nodded. "Take the private elevator on the left, Miss Hayes. Someone will meet you on the 38th floor." The elevator was stunning, polished wood panels, soft lighting, and complete silence as it ascended. I watched the floor numbers climb, my anxiety growing with each level. What awaited me at the top? The doors opened to reveal an elegant reception area unlike anything I'd seen in corporate America. Fresh flowers, original artwork, comfortable seating that looked like it belonged in a high-end hotel. A well-dressed assistant greeted me immediately. "Miss Hayes, welcome. Please follow me." We walked down a corridor lined with photographs showing Orion Holdings' history, factory floors, ribbon-cutting ceremonies, employees from different eras. I tried to walk slowly, studying the images, but the assistant's pace was brisk and purposeful. We stopped at a set of double doors, made of dark wood with brass handles. The assistant knocked twice, then opened the door. "Miss Sophie Hayes," she announced, then stepped aside for me to enter. The room beyond was a private dining room, not an office. A single table was set for 2, with white linens, fine china, and a small vase of orchids. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline at sunset. And standing by the window, dressed in an immaculate charcoal suit, was Mr. Liu. Except he didn't look like the Mr. Liu I knew. This man stood straighter, moved with quiet authority, and wore his silver hair in a style that spoke of expensive grooming. But the eyes, those kind, crinkled eyes, were unmistakably the same. "Hello, Miss Sophie," he said in perfect English, barely a trace of accent. "Thank you for coming. I believe we have much to discuss." My legs felt weak. I gripped the back of a chair for support. "Mr. Liu." My voice came out as a whisper. "I don't understand." He smiled that same gentle smile I'd come to know over countless evening conversations. "Please sit down. I owe you an explanation, and I owe you an apology for the deception." My mind reeled as I lowered myself into the chair. He sat across from me, his movements graceful and controlled. A staff member appeared, pouring water and tea before disappearing silently. "My full name is Liu Wei," he began. "I founded Orion Holdings 32 years ago with nothing but determination and a dream. I built this company from a single factory floor to what it is today, 12,000 employees across 4 continents, annual revenue exceeding $2 billion. I stared at him, unable to process what I was hearing. The kind janitor who'd eaten my leftover sandwiches and struggled with English grammar was a billionaire? "Every 3 to 4 years, he continued, I go undercover in one of our subsidiary companies. I work as a janitor, a warehouse worker, a cafeteria staff member, always at the lowest level. I do this because I never want to forget where I came from, and I need to know the truth about our corporate culture. Executives perform for the boss. But how do they treat people they think don't matter? That reveals who they really are." The words poured over me like cold water. Everything suddenly made sense, the sophisticated questions, the philosophical wisdom, his interest in my career. "You were testing us," I said quietly. "Testing the company you own." Liu Wei shook his head gently. "Not testing, observing. Understanding. I built this company on certain principles, Miss Hayes. I grew up poor in rural China. I watched my mother work as a cleaner in factories, treated like she was invisible. I swore that if I ever built something successful, I would never forget the dignity of every worker, regardless of their position." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "I've worked undercover at Tech Vision Industries for 2 years. In that time, I've seen many things. I've seen employees who walked past me without acknowledgement, which is fine, people are busy. I've seen others who were polite but distant, which is natural. And I've seen a few who were actively cruel, which concerns me greatly." My heart began to race. I knew where this was heading. "Then I met you, Miss Sophie. From that first evening when you helped me with a heavy trash bag, you treated me as an equal. Not with pity, not with performative kindness, but with genuine respect. You brought me food because you noticed I was hungry. You taught me English because you saw my desire to learn. You spent your evening hours talking with an old janitor when you could have been building relationships with people who could advance your career." Tears welled in my eyes. "You were just being a good person, Mr. Liu. That's all." "Exactly," he said softly. "You were being a good person when there was absolutely nothing to gain from it. When I was invisible to everyone else, you saw me. When I was nobody in that building, you treated me with dignity. Do you know how rare that is?" He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. "Over these 2 years, I've documented everything. The employees who showed character and those who showed only ambition. The leaders who lifted others and those who crushed them." He turned back to face me. "Victoria Sterling is one of the worst managers I've encountered in any of our companies. I've watched her systematically humiliate staff, abuse her position, and create a toxic environment. What you experienced was mild compared to how she treats people she considers truly beneath her." My breath caught. The cleaning staff, the cafeteria workers, the maintenance crew, she's treated them all with contempt. I've personally experienced her cruelty multiple times. But the incident that disturbed me most happened about 4 months ago. He returned to his seat, his expression grave. "She was berating me in the hallway late one night, telling me I was inefficient, that people like me were barely worth the minimum wage we're paid. She said, and I quote, "You're lucky to have this job. Don't make me regret not replacing you with someone younger and more capable." The pain in his voice was real, despite the power he now displayed. I am a 73-year-old man. I've built something meaningful with my life. Yet in that moment, being spoken to like garbage by someone young enough to be my daughter, I felt small. I felt the same shame my mother must have felt decades ago. "Mr. Liu," I whispered, "I'm so sorry. Don't apologize for her, Miss Sophie. But understand why this matters so much to me." "There's something else you should know," Liu Chenwei said, his voice becoming even more serious. "Victoria Sterling is my daughter." The world seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of the table. "You're what?" "My daughter," he repeated quietly. "My youngest child. I have 3 children, all successful in their own careers." Victoria changed her surname to Sterling when she was 25, wanting to build her career on her own merits without the Liu name. I respected that decision. His face showed a pain that transcended business concerns. I was a devoted but often absent father, building this company when my children were young. I tried to instill in them the values I learned from hardship: respect for all people, humility, kindness. My older 2 children understood these lessons. But Victoria... He paused, collecting himself. She embraced ambition without character. She climbed corporate ladders by stepping on others. When she applied to work at TechVision 3 years ago, she didn't know it was an Orion subsidiary. We'd just acquired it. I allowed her to be hired on her own merits, hoping the environment I'd built might help her grow. The tragedy of the situation hit me. "She didn't recognize you." "No," he confirmed. "We've been estranged for 5 years, since her mother's funeral." She was angry that I spent the evening talking with the caterers and funeral staff instead of networking with the prominent guests she'd invited. She told me I was embarrassing, that I'd never understand how to move in elite circles. We haven't spoken since. I took the janitorial position at TechVision, partially to understand our acquisition, but also hoping to reconnect with my daughter from a different angle, he continued. I thought if she saw me in humble circumstances, if we had real conversations, maybe she'd remember the values I tried to teach her. His voice cracked slightly. Instead, I discovered she'd become exactly what I'd feared. She treated her own father, though she didn't know it was me, with utter contempt. Multiple times, she walked past me without acknowledgement. Twice she berated me for minor issues. That night she threatened my job. I was cleaning near her office because I'd hoped she might talk to me. The heartbreak in his eyes was profound. This wasn't just about corporate culture. It was about a father watching his daughter become someone cruel. "But then there was you," he said, brightening slightly. "You showed me that not everyone in that building had lost their humanity. You reminded me why I built this company in the first place. Every evening we talked, you renewed my faith that good people still exist in corporate America." I didn't know what to say. The weight of this revelation was enormous. "Mr. Liu, why are you telling me all this now?" "Because change is coming," he said firmly. "I've concluded my observation period. I've gathered all the data I need. Now it's time to act on what I've learned. And you, Miss Sophie Hayes, are central to those changes." He pulled out a folder and placed it on the table between us. "I'd like to offer you a position as Vice President of People Analytics for Orion Holdings, reporting directly to our Chief Operating Officer." I stared at the folder, unable to process what I was hearing. "Vice President? But I'm just a junior analyst. I have 3 years of experience. I've never even managed a team." "You have something far more valuable than experience," Liu Chenwei said. "You have character. You have the ability to see people as human beings regardless of their title or position. You have analytical brilliance combined with emotional intelligence, a rare combination." He opened the folder, showing me a detailed job description. This role would involve analyzing workplace culture across all Orion companies, identifying toxic patterns, and developing systems to promote dignity-based leadership. You'd have a team of 12 analysts and a budget of $5 million annually. The numbers were staggering. The salary alone was more than triple what I currently made. "I've reviewed all your work over the past 3 years," he continued. "Your analytics are exceptional. But more importantly, your recommendations always consider the human impact. When you suggested those retraining programs instead of layoffs in your merger analysis, that's the kind of thinking I want leading this initiative. My head spun. This was beyond anything I'd imagined possible. I don't know what to say. You don't need to answer tonight, he assured me. But there's one more thing you should know. The changes at TechVision are happening immediately. Monday morning, I'm implementing a complete leadership restructure. Victoria will be informed that her position is being eliminated as part of the organizational realignment. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, relief, vindication, but also concern. What will happen to her? Lu Chenwei's expression became stern. She'll be offered a choice. She can accept a demotion to a non-management role with mandatory leadership training, or she can resign with a severance package. But her days of wielding power over others are finished. He stood and walked to a sideboard, pouring himself tea with the careful movements I remembered from our evening conversations. I've struggled with this decision for months. She's my daughter. I love her. But I cannot allow my love to excuse behavior that harms good people. She needs to learn the lesson she's refused to learn her entire adult life. That position is not the same as worth. That power without character is just cruelty. Will you tell her? I asked quietly. That you were the janitor? Yes, he said. Monday morning. I'm going to call her into my office, this office, and I'm going to tell her everything. I want her to understand that the lowly janitor she dismissed was her father. That the person she threatened to fire was the man who gave her life and built the company that employed her. The thought of that confrontation made me shiver. Do you think she'll change? He was silent for a long moment. I hope so. But hope and expectation are different things. I can provide consequences and opportunities, but I cannot force growth. That's up to her. He returned to his seat, his eyes meeting mine with intensity. But you, Miss Sophie, you don't need to change. You just need to grow into the leader you're already becoming. I've watched you treat people with dignity when it cost you professionally. Imagine what you could accomplish with actual power to create change. We talked for another hour. He shared more about his vision for Orion Holdings, his concerns about corporate culture in modern America, his hopes that the next generation of leaders would prioritize people alongside profits. He asked about my dreams, my goals, my fears about taking such a significant leap in responsibility. I'm scared I'll fail, I admitted finally. That I'm not ready for this. Good, he said, smiling. People who aren't scared of new challenges are usually overconfident fools. Your fear means you understand the weight of the responsibility. That's exactly the kind of humility that makes great leaders. He handed me another document. This is a contract offer. Take it home. Read it carefully. Talk to a lawyer if you want. I'll pay the legal fees. Take the weekend to think. But I hope you'll say yes, because I believe you can help transform how thousands of people experience work. As our meeting concluded, he stood and extended his hand formally. But when I took it, he pulled me into a brief, fatherly hug. Thank you, Miss Sophie, he said quietly. Thank you for seeing an old janitor as a person. You gave me a gift more valuable than you know. You reminded me why I do this work. I left Orion Holdings in a daze, clutching the folder against my chest. The night air was cool, and the city buzzed with Friday evening energy. I walked for blocks, trying to process everything. The kind janitor was a billionaire. The cruel HR director was his estranged daughter. And I, a junior analyst who just tried to be decent, was being offered an opportunity that would change my entire life. That weekend felt surreal. I read the contract dozens of times, each reading confirming it was real. I researched Lu Chenwei online and found articles about his business philosophy, his rags-to-riches story, his reputation for ethical business practices. Everything he told me was true. Saturday afternoon, I called my mother. I couldn't share all the details due to the confidentiality agreement I'd signed, but I told her I'd been offered an amazing job opportunity. Are you qualified for it? She asked practically. I don't know, I admitted. But someone thinks I am. Then trust their judgment, she said. And more importantly, trust yourself. You've always been the kind of person who works harder than anyone to prove you deserve what you've been given. Sunday evening, I made my decision. I drafted an acceptance email to Lu Chenwei, my hands shaking as I typed. I thanked him for his faith in me and confirmed I would accept the vice president position, pending the 90-day transition period outlined in the contract. His response came within minutes. Welcome to the team, Sophie. Your journey is just beginning. Monday morning, I arrived at TechVision early, knowing everything was about to change. At 9 o'clock, Victoria's assistant sent an urgent message to all department heads. Mandatory meeting in conference room A at 10 o'clock. The rumor mill exploded. People whispered about layoffs, restructures, dramatic announcements. I sat at my desk, my stomach churning with anticipation and anxiety. At exactly 10 o'clock, we filed into the conference room. Victoria sat at the head of the table, her expression unreadable. Our CEO stood beside her, looking uncomfortable. Then the door opened, and Lu Chenwei walked in, dressed in another impeccable suit. Several people's faces showed confusion. Who was this elderly Asian man? But I watched Victoria's face carefully, and I saw the moment of recognition. Her eyes widened. Her face went pale. Her mouth opened slightly in shock. "Good morning, everyone," Lu Chenwei said calmly. "For those who don't know me, I am Lu Chenwei, founder and principal owner of Orion Holdings. Some of you may recognize me from another context. I've been working here for the past 2 years as part of your evening janitorial staff." The room erupted in whispers. People looked at each other in confusion and disbelief. But Victoria sat frozen, staring at her father with an expression of absolute horror. "I make it a practice to work undercover in our companies," he continued, "because I believe you cannot truly understand an organization's culture from quarterly reports and executive summaries. You must experience it from the bottom. You must see how people with power treat people without it." His eyes swept the room, landing briefly on me before moving to Victoria. "I've observed many things during my time here. Some excellent work, some areas for improvement, and some behaviors that are completely unacceptable in any company that bears my name." The tension was suffocating. "Effective immediately, there will be leadership changes at TechVision Industries. Your CEO will remain in place. However, several management positions are being restructured." Lu Chenwei's voice remained calm and measured, but the authority in it was undeniable. "Victoria Sterling, please stand." Victoria rose on shaky legs, her face completely drained of color. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked small and uncertain. "You are my daughter," Lu said, and the room gasped collectively. "You are someone I raised, someone I tried to teach about dignity and respect. You changed your name to build your own career, which I respected. But in doing so, you abandoned the values that name represented." Tears began streaming down Victoria's face. "I watched you treat people with contempt because they held positions you considered beneath you. I personally experienced your cruelty when you berated an elderly janitor, me, threatening to have me fired for imagined incompetence. You never once looked closely enough to recognize your own father." His voice cracked slightly. "You walked past me 100 times in 2 years. I cleaned your office, emptied your trash, listened to you mock the lowly cleaning staff to your colleagues. Not once did you see me as a person worth acknowledging." Victoria's mouth moved, but no sound came out. "But this isn't just about me," Lu continued, his voice strengthening. "I've documented your systematic mistreatment of dozens of employees. I've watched you humiliate talented people like Miss Hayes simply because you could. I've seen you create an environment of fear rather than excellence." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Your position as HR director is eliminated effective immediately. You're being offered 2 options. Accept a non-management position in HR compliance with mandatory leadership and ethics training for the next year, or resign with 3-month severance." The silence in the room was absolute. Victoria stood trembling, tears running down her face, unable to speak. Then Lu turned to address the rest of us. "I want to introduce someone who represents everything I hope to find in this company. Sophie Hayes has worked here for 3 years as a data analyst. During that time, she's produced exceptional work while maintaining her integrity and kindness. She treated an old janitor with dignity and respect when everyone else ignored him, including my own daughter." People turned to look at me. My face burned. "Miss Hayes is being promoted to Vice President of People Analytics for Orion Holdings, effective after her transition period. She'll be working to ensure that dignity and respect become embedded in our corporate culture across all our companies." He looked directly at Victoria now. "The position you held with pride and wielded with cruelty is going to someone who understands that leadership is about lifting others, not crushing them." The junior analyst you dismissed and humiliated will now hold more organizational power than you ever did, because she has something you forgot, character. Victoria finally found her voice. Father, please, she whispered. I didn't know. I didn't recognize you. That's exactly the problem, Lou said, his voice heavy with sadness. You didn't recognize me because you never truly looked. You didn't see Miss Hayes's value because you were blinded by hierarchy. You've spent years building a career without building yourself. He walked closer to her, his expression softening slightly. I love you, Victoria. But love doesn't mean protecting you from the consequences of your choices. It means giving you the opportunity to become better. The question is, will you take it? Victoria chose the first option. She accepted the demotion and entered the mandatory training program. I heard later that she broke down completely after that meeting, spending hours talking with her father for the first time in 5 years. Whether she would truly change remained to be seen, but at least she was trying. As for me, I spent the next 90 days transitioning into my new role. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I built my team, developed new assessment frameworks, and began visiting Orion companies to understand their cultures. Lu Chunwei became a mentor, teaching me to see beyond numbers to the human stories they represented. On my first day as vice president, I received a framed quote from my office. It was in Lu's handwriting. Position is temporary. Character is forever. Never forget that the measure of a person is how they treat those who can do nothing for them. I think about Mr. Lu often, not the billionaire founder, but the kind janitor who hummed while he worked and listened to a struggling analyst's problems. He taught me the most important lesson of my career, that every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about, carrying dreams and dignity that deserve respect regardless of their job title. 3 years later, Victoria and I crossed paths at a company event. She approached me hesitantly. Sophie, she said quietly, I owe you an apology. I was cruel to you. I was cruel to many people. I'm working on being better, but I needed you to know I'm sorry. I looked at her and saw genuine remorse. Thank you, I said. We're all works in progress. She smiled sadly and walked away. And I understood then what Lu had known all along, that the greatest gift we can give anyone is the chance to grow, and the greatest legacy we can build is simply treating people with the dignity they deserve. The end.